Deep in the Congo Basin, witnesses now claim the Mokele Mbembe is real, and the truth behind its return is far more terrifying than legend ever imagined.
Something ancient is stirring in the Congo Basin. After decades of declining reports, sightings of the legendary Mbembe have exploded across Central Africa. Local villagers whisper of massive shapes emerging from murky waters of boats overturned by creatures that should have died out 65 million years ago. In the darkness of the Lukwala wetlands, their votes are pounded by the great waves, the locals whisper, and the mocking birds are them. Even ABC's David Muir has highlighted the growing number of mysterious river encounters in the region, underscoring just how serious these reports are. But here's what the cryptozoologists hunting this beast don't want you to know. Like, the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real, it feels super fabricated. The Mokele Mbembe is real, and the truth behind its sudden return reveals a horror far worse than any prehistoric monster. The awakening terror. Deep in the heart of Ozala-Kokua National Park, conservationist Solara Bongo stood frozen as the jungle erupted around her. Trees shook violently, monkeys shrieked in terror, and birds burst from the canopy in panicked clouds. In 2003, she had ventured into this remote wilderness to investigate an Ebola outbreak that had wiped out over 5,000 western land gorillas. But on this particular day, disease was the last thing on her mind. Something massive was moving through the forest. Something that defied explanation. For a heart-topping moment, Abongo was convinced she was about to come face to face with the stuff of legend, a Mokele Mbembe, the Congo's mythical dinosaur. The creature she thought she saw turned out to be a forest elephant. But her experience reflects a disturbing trend sweeping across the Congo Basin. After nearly a century of declining reports, sightings of the legendary Mbembe have surged dramatically in recent years. Villagers across the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, and the Central African Republic are reporting encounters with creatures that match the ancient descriptions perfectly. These aren't isolated incidents by attention-seeking locals. The reports are coming from multiple sources across vast distances, all describing the same terrifying characteristics. A massive creature the size of an elephant with smooth grayish-brown skin, a long serpentine neck stretching up to 10 feet, and a powerful tail that can allegedly overturn fishing boats. Witnesses consistently describe an animal that looks exactly like a sauropod dinosaur, complete with rounded three-clawed footprints that measure up to 3 feet across. The name Mokele Mbembe translates to one who stops the flow of rivers in the Lingala language, and eyewitness accounts suggest this translation is eerily accurate. Fishermen report boats being capsized by massive shapes moving beneath the water. The creature allegedly kills humans who venture too close, but in a detail that has puzzled cryptozoologists for decades, it never eats its victims. What makes these recent sightings particularly unnerving is their frequency and geographic spread. Joseph Onge, a Congolese biologist, recently witnessed farmers clearing jungle land when they heard what sounded like gorilla calls in the night. But when a local teenager heard the same sounds, he insisted it was Mbembe roaring. Czech conservationist Laura Lover has noticed the pattern, too. She reports that people from larger settlements who venture into previously untouched forest areas are suddenly encountering massive animals they've never seen before. The implications are staggering. Either an unknown species is emerging from the deepest parts of the rainforest, or something far more sinister is forcing these encounters. But as we'll discover, the truth behind the Mokele and return involves a monster far more terrifying than any dinosaur. Ancient whispers. Long before Western explorers ever set foot in Central Africa, the indigenous Baka people had been sharing stories of the creature that ruled the deepest waters of their homeland. For centuries, these forest-dwelling communities passed down detailed accounts of a massive beast that demanded respect and distance from anyone brave enough to venture into its domain. The earliest recorded mention of this creature in Western literature dates back to 1776, when French missionary Abbé Lévan Bonaventure Payart documented local legends in his book History of Luango-Kakonga and Other Kingdoms in Africa. Payart described hearing tales of a mysterious animal that left massive tracks nearly a meter wide pressed deep into the jungle floor. The locals spoke of it with a mixture of fear and reverence, describing it as a guardian spirit of the waterways. But it was German captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein-Zulesnitz who provided the first detailed Western account in 1913. During a survey of German colonies in what is now Cameroon, local villagers told him stories that would haunt cryptozoologists for the next century. They described an enormous reptile roughly the size of an elephant with a long flexible neck, a horn protruding from its head, and an alligator-like tail that could span incredible distances. The creature's behavior was particularly fascinating to early explorers. Villagers insisted the Mbembe was entirely vegetarian, feeding exclusively on the malumbo plants that grew along riverbanks. Yet, despite its plant-based diet, the beast was known to be aggressively territorial, attacking anyone who ventured too close to its feeding grounds. Most disturbing of all, witnesses claimed the creature killed without eating its victims, suggesting intelligence and purpose rather than simple predatory instinct. What captivated Western imaginations was the creature's alleged habitat preferences. Unlike other large African animals, the Mokele Mbembe supposedly lived in underwater caves connected to the vast network of rivers threading through the Congo Basin. It would emerge only to feed or travel between waterways, using hidden paths known only to itself through the densest parts of the rainforest. The descriptions were remarkably consistent across different tribes and regions. Despite the vast distances involved, from the Republic of Congo to Gabon, from Cameroon to the Central African Republic, indigenous peoples shared strikingly similar accounts of a creature that seemed to belong to another era entirely. Perhaps most chilling were the warnings that accompanied these stories. Local people spoke of the Mokele Mbembe's meat being poisonous, claiming that an entire village had once captured and killed one of the creatures, only for everyone who ate the meat to die shortly afterward. This detail suggested the creature possessed some form of natural defense mechanism that went beyond simple size and strength. These ancient whispers would soon capture the attention of the modern world, setting the stage for expeditions that would reveal truths far stranger than fiction. The scientific pursuit. The year 1980 marked the beginning of what would become the most intensive scientific hunt for a living dinosaur in modern history. Dr. Roy McCow, a biochemist from the University of Chicago, and explorer James Powell launched the first serious Western expedition into the Congo Basin. Armed with modern equipment and an unshakable belief that something extraordinary was waiting to be discovered, McColl's credentials were impressive, but his background in biology hardly prepared him for tracking large, potentially prehistoric creatures through one of the world's most challenging environments. Nevertheless, he approached the search with scientific rigor, conducting extensive interviews with local residents and documenting their accounts with meticulous detail. The expedition ventured deep into the Luala swamp region, following leads that pointed toward Lake Talele, a remote body of water surrounded by virtually impenetrable virgin jungle. Local guides spoke in hushed tones about this lake, describing it as the Mokele Mbembe's primary residence. The journey itself was treacherous, requiring the team to navigate through crocodile-infested waters and dense vegetation that had never been properly mapped. What they discovered during their interviews was both encouraging and deeply unsettling. Witness after witness provided remarkably consistent descriptions of encounters with creatures that defied modern zoological understanding. The accounts weren't vague or contradictory like many cryptid reports. Instead, locals provided specific details about the creature's appearance, behavior, and habitat preferences that aligned perfectly across different communities. Most compelling was what happened when researchers showed photographs of various animals to local witnesses. When presented with images of different species, from hippos to elephants to crocodiles, the witnesses could easily identify each one correctly. But when shown illustrations of sauropod dinosaurs, multiple individuals immediately pointed and declared, "That's Mokele." In the darkness of the Lukwalo wetlands, their votes are pounded by the great waves. The locals whisper, and the mocking birds are them. During their 1981 follow-up expedition, the team experienced something that would haunt them for years. While navigating the murky waters of Lake Talele, their boat encountered a massive wake moving through the water. The disturbance was unlike anything caused by known aquatic animals in the region. Their local guides immediately identified the source as Mbembe. But by the time the team prepared their cameras, whatever had created the wake had vanished beneath the surface. Herman Registers leading a rival expedition during the same period claimed multiple sightings and even produced low-quality photographs and sound recordings as evidence. However, when other researchers attempted to verify his claims, they discovered that only Riustas and his wife had actually witnessed the alleged encounters. None of their Congol's expedition members corroborated the sightings. The most promising development came in 1983 when Congol's zoologist Mokele Mbembe led a local expedition to Lake Tell. Mbembe claimed he successfully filmed a Malibe, but in a frustrating turn of events that typified these expeditions, the footage failed to develop properly. His account of the sighting contained details that changed over time, and no other witnesses could confirm what he claimed to have seen. Despite years of searching, these expeditions returned with tantalizing stories, but no concrete proof. Empty-handed hunters. The failures mounted with each passing year, but they only seemed to fuel more determined efforts to crack the mystery. Scottish explorer William "Billy" Gibbons launched multiple expeditions throughout the 1980s and 1990s, driven by motivations that went far beyond simple scientific curiosity. As a creationist, Gibbons believed that finding a living dinosaur would fundamentally challenge evolutionary theory and prove that humans and dinosaurs had coexisted. Gibbons led expeditions in 1985 and 1992, spending months in the Congo Basin, following every lead and investigating every reported sighting. His teams interviewed hundreds of local residents, collected alleged footprint casts, and explored the most remote corners of the rainforest. Despite his dedication and the resources invested in these ventures, Gibbons returned empty-handed with nothing more than second-hand accounts and blurry photographs that could have been anything from floating logs to partially submerged hippos. The pattern was becoming disturbingly consistent. Expedition after expedition ventured into the Congo Basin with high hopes and sophisticated equipment, only to return with the same frustrating combination of compelling eyewitness testimony and complete absence of physical evidence. The creature seemed to exist perpetually just beyond the reach of scientific verification. In 2018, a Danish expedition led by Lensgrave of Kuenborg brought a film crew and DNA scientist to Lake Tell employing the most advanced techniques available. They spent weeks exploring the lake and surrounding waterways, taking water samples, and using sonar equipment to map the lake bottom. While they discovered a new species of green algae, they found absolutely no trace of any large unknown animal. The lack of physical evidence became increasingly difficult to explain away. If a breeding population of large animals was living in the Congo Basin, they would necessarily leave behind traces that modern science could detect. Bones, DNA, and water samples. Clear photographs or video evidence should have emerged after decades of searching. More troubling was the realization that many expeditions had been compromised by the very motivations driving them. Researchers like Gibbons approached the search with predetermined conclusions, seeking evidence to support existing beliefs rather than conducting objective scientific investigation. Local guides recognizing the financial opportunities presented by Western crypt hunters began offering Malibe tours that promised encounters with the legendary creature. Some skeptical researchers noticed that reported sightings often coincided with the presence of foreign expeditions in the area. Local communities eager to please their visitors or capitalize on their interest seemed increasingly willing to provide the stories these expeditions wanted to hear. Donald Pro, a paleontologist who studied these expeditions, noted a disturbing pattern. The only people looking for molerie and are creationist ministers, not wildlife biologists. The search had become less about scientific discovery and more about validating predetermined beliefs about evolution and human history. But while these expeditions were failing to find their prehistoric quarry, something far more significant was beginning to emerge from the shadows of the Congo Basin. The real horror emerges. While cryptozoologists chased shadows through the Congo Basin, a far more tangible and devastating monster was systematically destroying the very habitat where Mokele was supposed to live. Between 2000 and 2016, the Congo Basin lost an area of forest comparable to the entire United Kingdom, approximately 23 million hectares of some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. This isn't just another environmental statistic. The scale of destruction represents one of the most rapid ecological collapses in human history. And it's directly connected to the recent surge in Mbembe sightings in a way that reveals the true horror of this story. As vast sections of pristine rainforest disappear under chainsaws and bulldozers, Animals that have lived in the deepest, most remote parts of the jungle for centuries are being forced into contact with human populations for the first time. Forest elephants whose habitats once spanned millions of acres now find themselves wandering into villages and farms. Western land gorillas displaced from their traditional territories appear in areas where local people have never seen them before. The connection becomes chilling when you realize what's really happening. Czech conservationist Laura of Lechova has observed that the people reporting Moabi sightings deep in the Congo Basin. Witnesses now claim the MA and BMBBE is real and the truth behind its return is far more terrifying than legend ever imagined. Are primarily from larger settlements where forests are being pushed back and residents aren't accustomed to encountering large wildlife. These aren't experienced forest dwellers who know every animal in their territory. These are people suddenly confronted with massive creatures they've never seen before in areas where such animals never appeared until deforestation drove them from their homes. Joseph Ona witnessed this process firsthand in 2023 while visiting a family in northern Congo. He watched smoke rise from 2 hectares of jungle they had cleared for agriculture, unknowingly destroying critical gorilla habitat. That very night, displaced primates foraged through the family's crops, their calls echoing through the darkness. When a teenager heard the sounds, he told Oanga with absolute certainty, it was Moabi roaring. The pattern emerges with disturbing clarity. As deforestation accelerates, encounters between humans and large wildlife multiply exponentially. People who have lived their entire lives without seeing forest elephants suddenly find themselves face to face with these massive creatures. In their fear and confusion, shaped by generations of Mula and Bee folklore, they interpret these encounters through the lens of ancient legend. This is disturbing on multiple levels. Not only does it reveal that indigenous wisdom about forest creatures is being filtered through the trauma of ecological destruction, but it also demonstrates how environmental collapse manifests in ways we never anticipated. The Mokele Mbembe isn't emerging from the depths of time. It's emerging from the depths of environmental catastrophe. The creature's apparent return actually represents the death throes of one of the world's most vital ecosystems. And the real monster destroying the Congo Basin operates on a scale that makes any prehistoric predator seem insignificant by comparison. When giants become ghosts, the transformation of real animals into legendary creatures becomes even more chilling when you understand the specific ways deforestation creates these encounters. Forest elephants, once distributed across millions of acres of dense jungle, have evolved behaviors perfectly adapted to their traditional habitat. They move through the forest using ancient paths, communicate across vast distances through subsonic calls, and emerge from dense vegetation in ways that can appear almost supernatural to the untrained eye. When these magnificent creatures suddenly appear in areas where humans have never encountered them before, the psychological impact is profound. A forest elephant's trunk, visible through dense foliage as it feeds along a riverbank, easily resembles the long neck of a sauropod dinosaur. Their massive gray bodies, partially obscured by vegetation and water, match perfectly with traditional descriptions of Mokembe's appearance. But it's not just elephants. Hippopotamuses, normally confined to specific river territories, are being forced to explore new waterways as their habitats are disrupted. Anyone who has witnessed an angry hippo attacking a boat understands how such an encounter could be interpreted as a monster attack. Hippos kill more humans in Africa than any other large animal. And they're notorious for overturning boats and attacking without apparent provocation, exactly matching the behavioral descriptions attributed to Moab. The acoustic elements of these misidentifications are particularly fascinating. Gorillas, when displaced from their territories, produce vocalizations that carry for miles through the forest. To people unfamiliar with these sounds, gorilla calls can easily be interpreted as the roars of some massive unknown creature. The terror in these displaced animals' voices adds to the otherworldly quality of the experience. Even more troubling is what happens to the traditional knowledge systems of indigenous communities during rapid environmental change. The Baka and other forest peoples developed sophisticated understanding of their environment over thousands of years. Their folklore served as a way to encode important survival information about dangerous animals and areas to avoid. But when the environment itself changes faster than cultural knowledge can adapt, even the most experienced forest dwellers find themselves encountering situations their traditional wisdom never prepared them for. Animals appear in unexpected places, behave in unpredictable ways, and move through landscapes that have been fundamentally altered by deforestation. Allard Bloom from the World Wildlife Fund noted that these mythological interpretations often contain a certain degree of truth. The mole and bee stories represent real encounters with real animals, but filtered through the trauma of environmental destruction and the confusion of species displacement. The saddest aspect of this revelation is that many of the magnificent creatures being misidentified as monsters are themselves facing extinction. The western lowland gorillas that once numbered over 125,000 in the Lake Tai region are disappearing at an alarming rate. Forest elephants have lost 80% of their population in recent decades. We're witnessing the transformation of Africa's most iconic megafauna into folklore. Not because they're mysterious, but because they're dying. The true monster revealed. The real monster stalking the Congo Basin doesn't have teeth or claws. It doesn't lurk in underwater caves or capsized fishing boats, but it has already killed more living creatures than any prehistoric predator ever could. And its appetite for destruction grows larger every single day. The true monster is industrial deforestation driven by an insatiable global demand for timber, minerals, and agricultural land. This beast operates with mechanical precision, consuming roughly 1.5 million hectares of Congo Basin forest every year. Unlike the malib, which allegedly kills but doesn't eat its victims, this monster devours everything in its path, leaving behind dead earth where once pristine ecosystems flourished. The scale of destruction is almost incomprehensible. Logging companies carve massive roads through virgin forest, opening previously inaccessible areas to human exploitation. Mining operations strip away entire landscapes in search of cobalt, diamonds, and other minerals that power our modern technological lifestyle. Slash-and-burn agriculture pushes deeper into the rainforest each year as growing populations need more land to survive. But here's what makes this monster particularly terrifying. It feeds on human desperation as much as natural resources. Local communities faced with poverty and lack of economic alternatives have little choice but to participate in the destruction of their own ancestral lands. When a logging company offers cash payments for timber rights, or when mining operations promise employment, communities that have lived sustainably for generations find themselves forced into partnership with the very forces destroying their world. The environmental consequences extend far beyond the Congo Basin itself. The rainforest serves as a massive carbon sink, absorbing 1.5 billion tons of CO2 annually and helping to regulate global climate patterns. As this natural climate control system disappears, the effects ripple across the entire planet, accelerating climate change and making extreme weather events more frequent and severe. The connection to zoonotic diseases makes the situation even more frightening. As human settlements push deeper into previously untouched wilderness, the opportunities for animal-to-human disease transmission multiply exponentially. The same deforestation creating Mokele and Mbembe sightings also increases the risk of the next pandemic. Ebola, monkeypox, and COVID-19 all represent examples of how environmental destruction creates conditions for devastating disease outbreaks. Selara Bongo, the conservationist who once mistook an elephant for Mokele, now views her experience with profound sadness rather than amusement. People are still confusing elephants and apes for Mbembe, she explains. And that's largely because of deforestation. Zoonotic diseases like Ebola are still spreading as people encroach more on the forest and the Congo is still disappearing. The bitter irony is unavoidable. While cryptozoologists spent decades searching for a legendary monster in the Congo Basin, a real monster was systematically destroying the very ecosystem they claim to be exploring. Like the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real, it feels super fabricated. The Mbembe they sought was always there. It just wasn't the creature they expected to find. What lurks ahead, the future of the Congo Basin and the creatures, both real and legendary, that call it home, hangs in the balance of decisions being made right now across the globe. As deforestation accelerates and climate change intensifies, we're approaching a tipping point where the world's second-largest rainforest could collapse entirely within decades. Current projections suggest that at the present rate of destruction, vast sections of the Congo Basin will be completely deforested by 2050. This isn't just an environmental tragedy. It's a cultural catastrophe that will erase thousands of years of indigenous knowledge and folklore along with the forests themselves. The stories of Mokele Mbembe passed down through countless generations will become meaningless when there are no longer any mysterious waters for legends to inhabit. But the increasing sightings reveal something even more disturbing about our immediate future. As climate change and deforestation continue to displace wildlife, encounters between humans and large animals will become increasingly frequent and dangerous. The creatures that once inspired Mbembe legends will be forced into closer and closer contact with human populations, creating conflicts that typically end badly for both sides. The rise in reported mole and sightings serves as an early warning system for ecological collapse. Each sighting represents an animal forced from its natural habitat, struggling to survive in an environment that's being transformed faster than evolution can adapt. These encounters are canaries in the coal mine, signaling that entire ecosystems are reaching their breaking point. The implications for global health are equally terrifying. As habitat destruction forces wildlife into contact with human populations, the probability of zoonotic disease emergence increases exponentially. The next pandemic may well emerge from the same ecological disruption that's creating modern mole and Mbembe sightings. The monster we should fear isn't hiding in jungle waters. It's gestating in the interface between human development and wildlife displacement. Perhaps most tragically, we're witnessing the death of wonder itself. Indigenous communities that maintained rich oral traditions about forest mysteries for millennia are watching their cultural heritage disappear along with the forests. Children growing up in communities where Mokele Mbembe stories once sparked imagination now see only the smoke of burning trees and the dust of mining operations. Yet there's still time to change this trajectory. Conservation efforts in the Congo Basin have shown that when local communities are given economic alternatives to forest destruction, they become the most effective protectors of their ancestral lands. International support for sustainable development could preserve what remains of this vital ecosystem while providing people with the resources they need to thrive. The choice facing humanity is stark. We can continue pursuing mythical monsters while ignoring the real monster of environmental destruction.